Everybody talks about how affordable Portugal is, but nobody talks about how much it actually takes to get you here. So today I am going to break down the upfront costs and the ongoing costs you need to know before you make this commitment. This is real talk abroad. Y'all know how I am. I'm pretty much straightforward, go straight to the point. I'm not saying this to scare you. I'm not trying to dissuade you. But what I want to do is give you the information that you need to make the right and the best financial decision for you. Okay? So if you are new here, hey, my name is Mary, and my channel is all about inspiring, encouraging, and supporting women to live the lives that they were designed to live. So today we're talking about money. We're talking about the cost of living here in Portugal. And please know that these are just averages. Okay, so the prices could vary. It's going to depend on location. It could be lower, it could be more. But I just want to give you a general idea and things to think about if this is a country that you're interested in. All right, so let's get straight to it. Let's talk about some of the upfront costs that people are not even considering when you're talking about moving to Portugal. All I hear in my comments is, hey, can I get an apartment for this price? Can I find a place for this price? Nobody's talking about all the other costs that you're going to incur before you actually get here. For instance, you can look at some of the graphics that I have here. You have to consider, what is it going to cost the visa application? That's going to be a fee. To process that visa application, if you're using a processing company like Monumental Visa, which does like the background checks and gets the apostles and the things that you need, that's going to cost. Um, if you need to get something translated, that's going to be another cost. Any of the paperwork, fingerprints might be additional costs for you. Okay. One of the main costs you're also going to have to think about is financing your Portuguese bank account. Depending on the price, it's pretty standard. I think right now I think it's like $11,400, something like that. Might be a little more, but this is the amount that you have to have in your Portuguese bank account to apply for a visa to become a resident here in Portugal. Not only do you need to have that money in your Portuguese bank account, you're going to have to pay the wire transfer or whatever the calculation to transfer from the US dollars to the euros, okay, which the dollar is declining. So you're going to end up paying more than 11,400 or 500, whatever that amount is, to actually get it to be 11,400 euros. You're going to be paying more of that in US dollars. So all of these things need to be calculated. And not only do you have to have money in a Portuguese bank account, you need to also provide financial stability that you are able to live here. For instance, if you're applying for the D7, which is the passive income visa, then you're going to have to show proof of your income over a period of months. So, for me, for instance, because I have a retirement pension, so I had to show my retirement statements for several months. I also showed my 401k statements. I also showed my savings balance. So I showed several forms of financial stability to make sure my application was approved. Now you can just do the minimum, whatever that is, but because they are cracking down and your application is going to be processed by who knows, they're really bombarded with a lot of applications right now. So some people are trained better than others. So you want to probably go above and beyond on your application to make sure it gets approved. So that's going to be up to you. But just know that you're going to have some money in not only the Portuguese bank and also your own bank account. And these are like thousands of dollars. Okay. Another thing that you need to be aware of is the housing. In order to get a Portugal visa, you're going to have a signed 1 year lease. And that's going to mean that you're going to probably have to pay upfront 2 months of rent for your lease. Not only that, but also 2 months deposit. So you might have to put down 4 months of rent in order to get your signed lease. Now, this is not in all cases, but in my particular case, that's what the landlord required, and that is within Portuguese law. They can request that. And so that's what I had to pay. So all of these costs were incurred before I even got on the plane for my scouting trip. That's not even including my scouting trip plane ticket. These are all the things that I had to pay for before I came to Portugal. Okay. And speaking of flights, if you take a scouting trip, that's going to be one flight. Okay. If you decide, and in order to apply for your visa, it has to be done in the US, that initial application. So you're going to be in the US applying, and since you already paying for your apartment, you might decide, okay, I'm going to go back and wait in Portugal since I'm already paying for this apartment. That's another plane ticket back to Portugal. And when your visa is approved, you have to send your passport to the embassy that's approving your visa. And that has to be done from the States. So you might have to come back to the States again. So all of these flights, logistically, is something that you're also going to have to keep in mind. You're going to have to budget those particular flights when you're deciding if you're going to move to Portugal or not. Okay. So I'm just letting you know there's like several different upfront costs that I don't hear too many people talking about. We just want to focus on the monthly costs, but you got to factor in those huge costs and make sure you're financially stable and ready to meet the requirements. Okay, so let's look at some of the monthly costs. And these are just general costs. Okay, the utilities are going to range based on the temperature outside, whether it's summer, whether it's winter, whether or not you're using your AC or your heater. It could be higher, it could be lower. Okay, so these are basic utilities for a particular size apartment. If your apartment is larger, my apartment is pretty large. It's a 3 bedroom, 3 bath. I have, I think, let me see, one, two, three, four. I have five. I have five AC and heating units. Of course, I am not using all five. My main heating units that I use are in my kitchen and my living room. I have a space heater that I use in my bedroom and a space heater that I use in the office. But I don't keep my heating systems on. I might turn them on to warm up the room and then they go off. And as you see, I'm in my cozy um, like a blanket. It's like a blanket, but it's a robe, okay? Because it keeps me warm while I'm here in my apartment. So these are just some general things here. You can look at the list. Mobile phone rates are going to vary. Your internet rates is going to vary depending on, if you use high speed, low speed, or whatever. But these are pretty much rates that I pay, pretty similar to these. And as you can see, the rent is going to determine based on where you are. If you're in the city center, it's going to be more expensive. That's in whatever area of Portugal you're in. And if you're outside the city center, it's going to be less. Now, these are ranges. They could even go higher than this. So you're going to have to decide what your budget is for your rent and factor all of those costs in when you have to pay those deposits. Think about that as well. Okay. So let's go to our next slide. Let's look at some of the grocery prices. Now, these are just averages. I did a couple of videos on grocery hauls, and I will attach those in a description so you can see exactly what you are getting for your money. But these are just some of the prices that you can get. And a kilogram, if it's a little over a pound, uh, that you can see the prices for. The prices are very reasonable. And one thing about the groceries here in the European region is that they are very strict when it comes to chemicals and things like that. And a lot of the things that are used in the US are actually banned here. So you're getting fresh products, you're getting fresh produce, fresh veggies, meat is fresh. So it's like clean eating without having to pay extra for like organic, because even if they say organic, there's so many things that are not really organic, and they can just slap that label on there. But here you are getting fresh, healthy food. All right, so you can look at some of the prices there. All right, so let's go into next slide, some of the restaurant prices. And it varies. You can go to a Portuguese restaurant. I went to one and it was like a special, and I got like a full plate of food for like €7. Okay. So they're saying at an inexpensive restaurant, you can pay, approximately $12, €12 for a meal. And if you go to a meal for two for a mid range, could be €45. And these are just averages. It could be less, it could be more. Um, but as you can see, if you're drinking wine or beer, those are very reasonable prices. You can get a whole bottle of wine for $5 or less. They say you can get good wine for a couple of dollars. I'm not a drinker, so I don't know about that, but I know that the prices are, you can get very reasonable price for things like that. All right. So let's go to the next slide. Let's talk about transportation here. That's one of the good things that I like. You can get a pass once you become, we don't have to be a resident here, but once you can get a pass. Because I had my pass way before I had my residency card. But you can get a $40 pass, transportation pass, and you can ride the trains and the buses from one zone to the next, all the way up for a very reasonable price. And if you wanted to go to Lisbon or other parts of Portugal, there's trains, there's buses. I'm taking the bus and the train, and they're all very affordable. Especially, I noticed the rates are cheaper if you get them 7 days in advance or more. And it depends on if you're going to the express train. The local train has more stops. I don't really like all the stops, so I do the express train. It's going to cost a little more. And depending on if you're riding a bus, if you want to choose your seats, they're going to charge you for choosing your seats. But I don't want to worry about where I'm going to sit, so I pay the extra couple of bucks just to choose my seat. But the bus rides are very modern, comfortable buses, all clean, very nice. The train rides are nice, a nice, comfortable ride. So you can literally move throughout Portugal for a very reasonable price. And also, the Uber systems work very well here. I don't really use Uber. I use the Bolt, B-O-L-T, because it's cheaper than Uber and it works just as well. You also can see the prices here. They have prices for taxi. They have the monthly transport price that I talked about. And they even have some car prices. Because some people do come here and drive. I'm not going to drive. I didn't, well, I drove in the States because I had to, but I don't have to drive here, so I don't. But if you wanted to see that, those are just averages. These are all just average prices. All right. And our last slide. So I just want you to know that the cost of living, when you're thinking about any country, not just Portugal, it's not just rent, it's not just groceries. You have to consider the upfront costs. You have to consider your logistic costs. You have to think about all of these things if you're thinking about moving abroad, because you don't want to not plan, okay, and end up in a financial situation that you can't get out of. So you're going to have enough savings. You're going to have an emergency stuff. You're going to have moving costs. You're going to have all of those things if that's something that you're interested in, because most people only budget for the monthly living expenses. But the real cost, those upfront costs, can really start adding up if you don't budget them before you arrive. Because listen, and this is the honest truth, I did not realize how much it was going to cost me to move to Portugal. I had not thought about 4 months of rent. I think I was only counting on 2 months. So it was a lot of things that I was like not thinking about or hadn't thought about it. But luckily, because I'm pretty financially stable, I had money saved up. I had, funds to pull from. But I was like, wow, I didn't realize I'm gonna have to do this. So I dropped the ball on my own self. Okay. And so that's why I'm sharing this with you. Make sure you check everything, because I did not. Okay. But I don't want you to be caught off guard not knowing what you're going to have to pay or put out even before you get on the plane. Okay. So listen, if this is like, oh gosh, Mary, this is a lot, don't worry. I have a private school community that you can join me and other women that we are figuring it out together. We're supporting each other and we are making changes and being there for each other. So I will drop the link in the description for that. And if this is a video you found helpful and you want to support my channel, make sure you hit the like and share it with someone that may benefit from this. All right. So I hope this was helpful, because there is a lot to this moving abroad stuff. And if you don't think about all of these things, it can be a financial burden. It really can. And some people haven't thought about it, and their move abroad situation was probably cut short because they didn't think about it financially. So when people say, "Oh, is it cheap? Did you some things I get, oh, was Panama cheaper than Portugal?" I mean, cheap has nothing to do with it, you know? And if you are trying to move to a different location, oh, because the rent is cheaper, blah, blah, blah. Well, you gotta get to that place. So make sure you've also factored in your logistics and not just moving to a country because, quote, you heard it was cheap. All right. So I don't want to go off on a tangent. I hope this was helpful to you. Thank you so much for tuning in and stay tuned for the next video. Ciao, ciao.